Welcome to 52 Miniatures. My name is Alex and this video is sponsored by Squarespace. The snow is falling. I'm on my way to the bunker. It's early morning and I've been getting this weird alarm from my surveillance. I don't know what's going on. It looks like turnips. So nice to get rid of some of that noise. For some reason, my 3D printer looks like it's been printing turnips.
Yeah, it is indeed turnips.
I'm going to set this place up and we can have a bit of a closer look. I got the turnips and models out of the 3D printer, but at the bottom, I found a note. Feels like there should be better places to leave notes. Oh, this is really awkward, isn't it? Okay. Oops. Dear Alex, these are miniatures from the Turnip28, the Shattered Lance, out on Kickstarter, the 28th of November. Do what you want with the models. Sorry for breaking into your bunker. Signed, Max. So what Max has printed on my 3D printer, kind of weird that, is cavalry. There's these really cool, weird-looking horses and armored knights. They almost look medieval-ish. And I have a plan. I tend to make little dioramas with Space Marines from the Horus Heresy box. And I put the Space Marine in an alternative universe where it doesn't really belong. So I'm going to make a sort of Turnip28 Space Marine using bits from whatever it is that Max has printed for me. I might print some more from the previous release of miniatures for Turnip28. Maybe we should do like a dueling scene. Knight in armor versus Space Marine, perhaps? Let's see what happens. And while I build, I can tell you a little bit more about Turnip28.
Before I talk a bit about the game and the diorama, I want to say that a goal of mine for this build is to be influenced by the style of this game and adapt the painting to something hopefully useful for gamers, not just a pretty diorama. When we come to the painting stage, there is at least one trick in there that I think could work if you want that grungy look for your army. If you're already into Turnip28 or a game of similar style, this will hopefully be something for you. Onwards. Turnip28, the war game made by the great Max, apparent burglar extraordinaire, can be downloaded for free from the Turnip28 Patreon. This following introduction is taken from the first paragraphs of those free rules. Churned mud and swamplands stretches out in the gloom. Thick fog hangs heavy in the air. Rolling barrows loom out of the murk. A strange root withers underfoot. 1,000 years after the defeat of Napoleon at the Battle of Austerlitz, the world has fallen into decay. Endless war has led to technology stagnating, and beautiful countrysides have been ground to a thick ruin under the boot of 1,000,000 dead men. Now nothing grows. A bizarre and horrible root covers the land, strangling the life from the trees, poisoning the water, and filling the sky with an acid mist. Humanity barely endures by harvesting this disgusting tuber. It twists their bodies and minds, infesting their thoughts with divine visions of lost vegetables. Bizarre religious orders have formed. They stockpile abandoned weapons unearthed by the twisting roots, marching in column under fluttering banners, brandishing mud-clogged muskets and rusted bayonets. They are cruel parodies of long-forgotten armies on the march. Gather your troops, fix bayonets. Devote yourself to the roots. Turnip28 has long been a kitbash's dream. Folk use bits from, say, historical war game kits and transform entire armies into weird, mutated, hallucinating, root-worshipping armed masses. There are also official miniatures available, and this coming Kickstarter sees the second release of miniatures as well as new cults and scenarios. The theme is like Siege themed, and so I want to try and make a diorama with a Siege vibe. A space marine has warped into this universe, a scene strangely familiar to the one 40,000 years into the future. War, mud, and fanatics. Also, the Holy Turnip seems to be issuing pretty much the same type of commands as its past emperor did. Kind of looks the same too, shriveled up in a big jar. After a few years, gear becomes rotten through, and whatever can be found replaces the once so great ceramite. Lost its helmet a while back, but a suitably beaky replacement was not difficult to find. Also, why didn't I always carry around my own teapot and frying pan? That should be standard loadout in the 41st millennium as well. I stripped the marine of some of its embellishments, neutralizing the futuristic vibe a little. I mean, these fellows are kind of knights in space, so it's not difficult to bash them into something medieval looking. The arms used for the marine are from the Shattered Lance, and I've scaled them up about 10% to fit the frame of the marine. The backpacks and helmet are from the previous Turnip releases. The backpack also enlarged slightly, but the helmet not. I also used bits from what Turnip stuff I've printed in the past, clipping out details and turnips to adorn the dear marine. It's one of those great things about a game like Turnip, that clear visual hook. As long as you stick some root vegetables on your mini, it all comes together. Also spikes and tufts, but that's another story, I guess.
I just wanted to say that if you think this whole
Down here.
Hi.
Have you ever heard about Squarespace?
Yeah, sure, the sponsor of this video, but I was...
Exactly. Let me tell you some more.
Yeah, okay.
Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for creating websites, an intuitive platform that I've been using for some time. Lucky for me, there's no need for expertise. You can choose between carefully curated layouts or start a completely personalized website with the new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. A tailored website to suit your needs. For me, Squarespace has been a great tool, starting with a nice template that I can adjust for my specific needs. I've created a website with introductions to my work, with galleries of my miniatures and such. It also hosts my online store. Customizing the shop with print-on-demand t-shirts as well as my own artworks and downloads has worked out well, and with a back end that makes my side of things simple when dealing with deliveries and fulfillment. The checkout and payment options for customers works seamlessly, accepting credit cards, PayPal and Apple Pay, but also pay later options like Afterpay and ClearPay. If you're looking for somewhere to display your art, sell merch, if you have a painting service or sell STLs, start up a website for your own game store or club, check out Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/52miniatures to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Well, thank you, Alex, and thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video. Now, I just wanted to say, if you think this sort of Space Marine in an alternative universe thing is fun, there is a playlist where you can check out my previous Stormtrooper Space Marine, or Roman Space Marine, or, you know, several others. And if you're in Stockholm, you can go to Alphaspel, the game store, and see quite a few of them in real life.
I make all of these dioramas on a similar base. It's just a simple square piece of wood. But because of the dual idea, I needed more space. A piece of corkbark became the weird gnarled, rocky terrain I needed to fit the scene. Now, sometimes dioramas can be very simple things, and this is one of those times. All I need to do is sell the story. Remind people of little things that then can trigger ideas in their heads of what is going on and where we are. I want the feel of a siege, so there should be walls. There should be loose stones and bricks, obviously bits of soldiers that have failed at their job description, that was climb that wall and open the gate from the inside. Maybe a sense of elevation for the Marine, like it's defending the castle wall from the onslaught of wave after wave of enemies. In the end, I didn't really need many bits. Honestly, the corkbark is doing most of the work. The wall was made out from cornerstones I saved from a previous project. Some mortared stones and bits of a soldier. I glued in 2 arms holding a rifle, like some soldier that has just fallen. I'm of the persuasion that a scene like this always needs 3 characters, 3 points of interest. As it's a duel between the knight and the Marine, we need a little something of a 3rd character. If so, a fallen soldier. I then covered parts of the ground with this fantastic A Tale of Grimdark ground cover by Kraut Cover Scenics. It's got bits of dead people in it. I mean, fake miniature dead people. And we're ready for painting. As mentioned earlier, I want to paint this piece like it's a Turnip28 piece. For me, personally, that means a muted sort of grim, dark and dirty vibe. But I'm also inspired by what I've noticed about a lot of turnip stuff, and that is the fun and fast approach to getting armies on the table to play fun games with. So, I want to share what I think is a great way to get a good head start on painting your way through a lot of Grim-style models. Let's call it the Turnip Prime for now. At first, it might seem like a lot of steps, but when looking at it out of an army painting perspective, it's not really a big thing. It lends itself to airbrush, but the airbrush is not necessary. First off is a zenithal prime. That means spraying your miniature with black primer first. When the black is dry, you spray white over that. Spraying from above the miniature at a slight angle. I'm doing it with my airbrush, but this works with rattle can as well. The result is like the miniature is white on the faces pointing upwards and black on everything facing down. I've then tinted this slightly with ink. This is optional. I did it mainly to get a dystopian vibe right off the bat, a cool blue tone from below and a warmer, almost sunset pink from above on the scenery. The next important step is we're going to mix ourselves an oil wash. This is done by mixing oil paint with white spirit. The ratio is personal, but you can experiment with something in the region of 10 times white spirit to 1 part paint. I'm mixing a dark blue, a black and a brown to get a cool dark brown. I find straight black too stark. You can mix what you feel like, really. I cover everything with this wash, the entire diorama and the miniatures. It can be good to wait overnight for the primer to cure properly beforehand. I kind of waited at least 15 minutes. After the oil wash has set a bit, maybe 20 minutes later, I go in and clean up some of it from the raised areas. This can be done in several ways. One option is to moist a Q-tip in white spirit and gently rub over the miniature. It's like using an eraser, really. I figured the diorama was a little large for Q-tips, so I used a piece of the kind of cloth you use for wiping glasses clean, also moistened in white spirit. This tends to work great, only this time I seem to have bought the kind of cloth that left quite a bit of little fibers behind, or the more grimdark texture, I guess. Another way is just to moist a flat brush with some white spirit and try and brush away the oil wash with a gentle hand. This is becoming my favorite type of eraser. The goal here is, I guess, to make sure the oil paint stays in all the crevices, nooks and crannies, as well as enhance the overall shadows here and there and get rid of most of the rest. When this has set and dried, sometime the next day, what we have is some very good looking black and white miniatures. There is an overall gradient from deep shadows to highlights, as well as contrast enriching shadows in every crevice with a slight oil wash grime look all over. With a layer of acrylic varnish on top, this is to me the ultimate starting point for some grungy looking models. Any transparent paint on top of this, like diluted inks or contrast style paints, and you're kind of done. I mean, you don't really have to paint everything now, just some splashes of colour here and there. It might seem like many steps, but if you're painting a lot of minis, you'll find that each step is a simple step, and you're getting places fast. You can of course alter the steps as well, like changing colour of primers or washes. For me, after this Turnip Prime, followed by a varnish, I moved on to transparent paints. Lots of them, an array of muted colours. I guess I'm after a sun-bleached look, dreary. Remember, because of the great base coat, one doesn't really need the contrast effect, just the colour tint. So inks or anything transparent will also work well. When working on a diorama like this, I try to stick to one look. These are in the end not individual miniatures, they're a piece of the same scene, and so I try to limit myself. Obviously a splash of colour here and there can help tell a story, but I want a coherency going, like a classic painting or something. After those quick tinting layers, things were actually looking good, but I want a little more finesse, just a little. So I'm going to do some highlights and stuff. I think mainly textures, scratches and things like that to get the right vibe going. I found all these tubes of paint I forgot about, and feels like a waste having them around if I don't use them. You can of course use any paints. I spontaneously created a little system to keep me inspired. Some pastel colours in the middle, doing most of the work, a few primary colours on the right, and some whites and browns on the left. An example of how I used this, for instance, was when painting some details on a turnip. I could mix a shadow colour, blue, green and black, mix that into the pastel violet, the main turnip colour, for some darker mid-tones, as well as mix in some warm skin tones or off-white into the violet for highlights. And other than highlighting turnips, there was simple texturing, enhancing details really, either by edge-style highlights or by painting scratches and damage. Again, I don't really need to paint in any standard way. There is no having to cover things with this paint, no necessary basics. This is more like makeup to the Turnip Prime. And this is a fun way to paint for me, quickly working along, adding some excitement. All I'm doing now is playing around and having some fun. Another little example of my palette layout idea, I painted the girdle thing, whatever it's called, the thing you drive the horse with, a bit too vibrant green. To mute it down, instead of searching for colours in the rack, I just mixed some brown, red and black, mixed in a fair bit of water and tinted the green towards a brown. I then added some black and brown and white to the green, creating more of an olive green, and covered some of the original highlights with this less saturated green, a green that fit the scheme a lot better. I could then go ahead and paint on some chivalry-looking stripes of off-white and tint them with that original dark red-brown mix to make the stripes look part of the rest of the cloth. Just kind of nice to not have to reach for colours a single time for this entire paint job is all I'm saying. All I needed was right there in the palette. Back to the diorama. I've painted it very monotone, like painting more of a light than individual bits. The stones have this almost Caucasian skin tone vibe, so I highlighted everything with bright Caucasian skin tones, even if it's a stone or a rock or a helmet. I'd apparently chosen green as the accent colour to the whole thing while painting the horse, so I repeated the green on the dead bits as well as adding the same green as a moss or something growing on the castle wall. And it was indeed all coming together, but I felt a need for one last addition of decay. If ever the time, it would be now. Chipping and rust. This is a favourite technique, the sponge technique. I use a sponge. This is from some sponge foam packaging, I believe. Tear off a suitable piece and hold it with a pair of tweezers. Dip it in paint, a very dark brown in this case. Get rid of a little excess and then stipple on. The result very much looks like chipped paint. I go for the edges and some symbolic chips here and there, but wherever one would think wear would happen naturally. It's easy to get carried away with this technique, but in this case that doesn't really matter. After, I mix some rusty looking colours and start to fill in some of the chipped areas with rust. This is the kind of thing I could sit and do all day. But I try to just do one swift pass and then move on to the next miniature, making sure I don't miss any spiky bits. The same rust paint can of course be used to just paint on bigger areas of rust, telling the point of long wear and decay, as well as that this siege has probably gone on for years and no one is really getting anywhere but dead. And now I can start to smell the completed diorama. Time to glue everything together. And it really did get quite the painting vibe. I'm happy with that. Just one last step, some dry pigment powders. This not only adds a dirt quality of a sort difficult to achieve with wet paints, it's a great way to hide anything I'm not pleased with. So certain areas of the ground that just are not happening much, or the legs of the horse that I just don't feel like painting much. Same as the feet on the marine. If you're working on an army, just don't bother about painting from about knees and down. Just cover that stuff with pigment powder. And hey presto. Pigment powders often look overpowering at first, but after set in place, I use white spirit, they kind of dull down once everything is dry. And I did indeed matte varnish the diorama as the absolute final step. That chalky ultra matte look fits this scene well. The very matte varnish takes even more of the color out of the equation, yet adds more of that painterly look that I kind of stumbled upon there. And we're done. All rise in the presence of the Holy Turnip and its marine. Make sure you check out the Shattered Lance Kickstarter. On the model side, there's going to be not only cavalry, but also a huge monster and stuff. If you're interested in the game itself, as I said, the rules are free on the Turnip28 Patreon, so go get fanatical or something. Thank you for watching. I hope you like the diorama. A great thank you to my patrons. The reason I can make these videos is because of Patreon support, and I would gladly see you as my next patron. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.